In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and the bold.
There is nothing to fear in the Satanic Bible, for it will not transform you into something that you are not. It cannot convert you or persuade you in directions not inherent to your nature. Its powers lie in the ability to show you what you are through your reaction to its contents. Embrace them, and your life shall gain a new focus, for you will have sharpened your understanding of self, and you will see more clearly how you differ from those around you. Reject some or all of these hard-nosed postulates, and you are free to move on towards whatever other spiritual concept heaven that provides you with satisfaction. However, you will no longer be ignorant of what it means to be a Satanist. If you've grasped these fundamentals and have the talent to read people, you might notice that there are such individuals about you, and like LaVey himself, that they are some of the most just and fascinating folks you've ever had the pleasure of knowing. These are part of the comments from Magus Peter H. Gilmore, the high priest of the Church of Satan.
The Abracast. Occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
Welcome, everybody, recording from the very moist, very wet, stormy, it was a dark and stormy night here in the Stigmata Studios. I'm John Towers, and this is the Abracast. Yeah, Stigmata Studios and Pickle Factory. I'm John, and this is the Abracast. This evening, I'm kind of amped up. We're going to start our examination of Anton, Szandor, LaVey's The Satanic Bible. So I'm sure that we are going to have a blast. I'm actually raring to go, so I'm not going to bullshit about any other stuff. So join me and raise your glass, whatever you're noshing on this evening. Your Capri juice box, your Kool-Aid Man cup, the one that you got to send in like 5 proofs of purchases, and they send you like a little plastic Kool-Aid Man cup so you can go, oh yeah! Raise your glass, whatever you're drinking from this evening, to the sky, and join me in thanking my Patreon supporters and Subscribe Star supporters. Thank you guys so much. Without you, this couldn't be possible. And some of you guys might have been like, hey man, you only put one show out last week. What the fuck was up with that? Well, what the fuck was up with it? That's what I have to say, because I did like fucking 5 episodes of the week before. That's what the fuck was up with it. The show's weekly anyways, so anything past the show that drops on Sunday is gravy for you guys anyways. So, enough. So Anton, Szandor, LaVey is very interesting kind of character. And you know what we don't do here on the show is we don't talk about these guys and their stories. You can go anywhere to hear that stuff, right? What we do is we specifically talk about their work. So, LaVey wrote the Satanic Bible, and then he also wrote another book like a companion book called Satanic Rituals, which we're going to get to eventually. So the book starts here in earnest with the 9 Satanic Statements. So here we go. The Satanic Statement number 1. Satan represents indulgence instead of abstinence. 2. Satan represents vital existence instead of spiritual pipe dreams. 3. Satan represents undefiled wisdom instead of hypocritical self-deceit. 4. Satan represents kindness to those who deserve it instead of love wasted on ingrates. Number 5. Satan represents vengeance instead of turning the other cheek. Number 6. Satan represents responsibility to the responsible instead of the concern for psychic vampires. Number 7. Satan represents man just as another animal, sometimes better, more often worse than those that walk on all fours, who because of his divine, spiritual, and intellectual development has become the most vicious animal of all. Number 8. Satan represents all of the so-called sins. They all lead to physical, mental, or emotional gratification. Number 9. Satan has been the best friend the church has ever had, as he has kept it in business all these years. So I kind of wanted just to touch off with these statements here. And a lot of the word Satanism is being thrown around a lot these days. I'm looking at you, QAnon. I'm looking at you. And so what I need to do, I'm going to venture to just do it this one time. And so you hear people talk about this stuff and they just whip this thing like a dead horse. There is a difference between Satanism, as we're talking about here. We'll call it LaVeyan Satanism, where it is more about the ritual and about the serving of your self and materialism, maybe a little bit in there. They are not necessarily their theology, as it were, is there. It's not as if Satan is an actual entity somewhere that they are worshiping. This is why the Satanic Statements are important, and this is why we're kind of talking about it here. You understand, like, in each of these statements, they say what Satan represents. So it's not an entity of, it's not this entity in hell that they're worshiping, right? So the QAnon stuff, and they're talking about the Satanistic pedophiles and all of this stuff, I believe that would lean more towards something I would call maybe Luciferianism, where they're actually, theoretically, I guess, worshiping an entity that they believe is the fallen angel, Lucifer, Satan, the adversary, the old goat, all of this stuff. So LaVeyan Satanism that we're talking about here is more, they're like, it's more of like radical atheism with a strong bent against organized religion. That's why a lot of their ceremonies and whatnot are inversions. The black, the upside down inverted cross and all of this stuff. So, like I said, I'm just going to touch on this here and we're just going to continue on with it. So if you're want to talk about, like you've seen the title of this and you tune in wanting to talk about adrenochrome and pedophiles and cannibals, you're not going to find this here. Okay, we're talking about the actual Church of Satan. Okay, so I feel like I've covered that pretty good. But another thing that I want to touch on real fast, and you guys know if you've listened to the show enough, that that a lot of this stuff is going to wind up sounding, you heard it in the 9 Satanic Statements here, a lot of this stuff is going to sound like Nietzschean Zarathustra kind of uber mensch stuff. A lot of this is going to sound like Thelemic Crowleyism, do what thou wilt is the whole of the law sort of stuff. And like even with the Ayn Rand, those John Gold episodes that we did, I find myself talking about the occult and ritual magic and stuff as radicalized responsibility. And here, I'm not even barely even like 11 minutes into this thing, and we're already the sixth satanic statement here. Satan represents responsibility to the responsible instead of concern for psychic vampires. So I'm going to continue on from that point, talking about those two sort of things, so you see where I'm coming from on it. But there's like a rider to that last thing, and it's something that I've bitched about before, about how whenever you get into these kind of things, the left is all over, like it's all progressivism, and sometimes when you read the actual work, it's hard to wrap your mind around it, or so it seems. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around reading something like Satan represents responsibility to the responsible instead of concern for psychic vampires. Or here, just let me cut the end of this off. Satanism represents responsibility to the responsible, and then you tune in to a podcast and they're like, yes, we're progressive Satanists. so there are my kind of 3 points as I'm going into this thing. Okay, enough. The first portion of this book is called the Book of Fire, the Book of Satan, the Infernal Diatribe. I got lube. The first book of the Satanic Bible is not an attempt to blaspheme as much as it is a statement of what might be termed diabolical indignation. The devil has been attacked by the men of God relentlessly and without reservation. Never has there been an opportunity, short of fiction, for the dark prince to speak out in the same manner as the spokesman of the Lord of the righteous. The pulpit pounders of the past have been free to define, quote, good and, quote, evil as they see fit, and have gladly smashed into oblivion any who disagree with their lies, both verbally and at times physically. They talk of charity when applied to his infernal majesty becomes an empty sham, and most unfairly too, considering the obvious fact that without their satanic foe, their very religion would collapse. How sad that the allegorical personage most responsible for the success of the spiritual religions is shown the least amount of charity and the most consistent abuse. And by those who most unscrupulously preach the rules of fair play. For all the centuries of shouting down the devil has received, he has never shouted back at his detractors. He has remained the gentleman at all times, while those he supports rant and rave. He has shown himself to be a model of deportment, but how he feels it is time to shout back. He has decided it was finally time to receive his due. Now the ponderous rule books of hypocrisy are no longer needed. In order to relearn the law of the jungle, a small, slim diatribe will do. Each verse is an inferno, and each word is a tongue of fire, and the flames of hell burn fierce and purify. Read on and learn the law. 1. In this arid wilderness of steel and stone, I raise up my voice that you may hear. And to the east and to the west I beckon, and to the north and to the south I show a sign of proclaiming. Death to the weakling and wealth to the strong. 2. Open your eyes that you may see, O men of mildewed minds, and listen to me, ye bewildered millions. 3. I stand forth to challenge the wisdom of the world, to interrogate the laws of men and of God. 4. I request reason for your golden rule, and ask that why and wherefore of your 10 commandments. 5. Before none of you printed idols do I bend in acquiescence, and he who saith thou shalt to me is my mortal foe. 6. I dip my forefinger in the watery blood of your impotent mad Redeemer, and I write over his thorn-torn brow the true Prince of Evil and the King of the slaves. 7. No hoary falsehood shall be truth to me. No stifling dogma shall encramp my pen. 8. I break away from all conventions that do not lead to my earthly success and happiness. 9. I raise up in stern invasion to the standard of the strong. 10. I gaze into the glassy eyes of your fearsome Jehovah and pluck him by the beard. I uplift a broad axe and I split open his worm-eaten skull. 11. I blast out the ghastly contents of philosophically whited sepulchres and laugh with sardonic wrath. Part 2. 1. I behold the crucifix. What does it symbolize? Pallid incompetence, hanging on a tree. 2. I question all things as I stand before the festering and varnished facades of your haughtiest moral dogmas. I write thereon in letters of blazing scorn, lo and behold, all this is fraud. 3. Gather round me, O ye death defiant, and the earth itself shall be thine to have and to hold. 4. Too long the dead hand has been permitted to sterilize living thought. 5. Too long right and wrong, good and evil have been inverted by false prophets. 6. No creed must be accepted upon authority of a divine nature. Religions must be put to the question. No moral dogma must be taken for granted. No standard of measurement defied. There is nothing inherently sacred about moral codes. Like the wooden idols of long ago, they are the work of human hands, and what man has made, man can destroy. 7. He that is slow to believe anything and everything is of great understanding, for belief in one false principle is the beginning of all unwisdom. There's just some pretty good life lessons in here. 8. The chief duty of every new age is to upraise new men to determine its liberties, to lead it towards material success, to rend the rusty padlocks and chains of dead customs that always prevent healthy expansion, theories and ideas that may have meant life and hope and freedom for our ancestors may now mean destruction, slavery, and dishonor to us. 9. Environments change, no human ideal standeth sure. 10. Whenever, therefore, a lie has built itself a throne, let it be assailed without pity and without regret. For under the domination of an inconvenient falsehood, no one can prosper. Let established sophisms be dethroned, rooted out, burned, and destroyed, for they are a standing menace to all true nobility of thought and action. That was number 11. Number 12. Whatever alleged, quote, truth, unquote, is proven by results to be but empty fiction, let it be unceremoniously flung into the outer darkness among the dead gods, dead empires, and dead philosophies and other useless lumber and wreckage. 13. The most dangerous of all enthroned lies is the holy and the sanctified, the privileged lie, the lie that everyone believes to be a model of truth. It is the fruitful mother of all other popular errors and delusions. It is a hydra-headed tree of unreason with 1,000 roots. It is a social cancer. Number 14. The lie that is known to be a lie is half eradicated, but the lie that is even intelligent person accepts as fact, the lie that has been inculcated in a little child at its mother's knee, is more dangerous to contend against than a creeping pestilence. I actually should be taking notes with these. Here, I gotta annotate this one. I need to make a little note here. Media. Number 15. Popular lies have been the most potent enemies of personal liberty. There is only one way to deal with them. Cut them out to the very core. Just as cancers, exterminate them, root and branch, annihilate them, or they will us. Part 3. Number 1. Love one another. It has been said is the supreme law, but what power made it so? Upon what rational authority does the gospel of love rest? And why should I not hate my enemies? If I love them, does that not place me at their mercy? Here. Number 2. It is natural for enemies to do good unto each other. And what is good? Number 3. Can the torn and bloody victim, quote, love, unquote, the blood-splashed jaws that rend him limb from limb? Number 4. We are not all predatory animals by instinct. If humans ceased wholly from preying upon each other, could they continue to exist? Number 5. It is not lust and carnal desire, a more truthful term to describe love when applied to the continuance of the race. Is not the love of a fawning scriptures simply a euphemism for sexual activity? Or was the great teacher a glorifier of eunuchs? Number 6. Love your enemy and do good to them that hate and use you. I need to make another media note here. Is this not the despicable philosophy of the spaniel that rolls on its back when kicked? Number 7. Hate your enemies with the whole heart. And if a man smite you on one cheek, smash him on the other. Smite him hip and thigh, for self-preservation is the highest law. Number 8. He who turns the other cheek is a cowardly dog. Number 9. Give blow for blow, scorn for scorn, doom for doom. with compound interest liberally added thereunto. Eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, aye, fourfold, 100-fold. Make yourself a terror to your adversary, and when he goeth his way, he will possess much additional wisdom to ruminate over. Thus shall you make yourself respected in all walks of life, and your spirit, your immortal spirit, shall live, not in intangible paradise, but in the brains and sinews of those whose respect you have gained. I like that one. Part 4, number 1. Life is the great indulgence. Death is the great abstinence. Therefore, make most of life here and now. Part 2. There is no heaven of glory bright and no hell where sinners roast. Here and now is your day of torment. Here and now is your day of joy. Here and now is your opportunity. Choose ye this day, this hour, for no Redeemer liveth. Part 3. Say unto thine own heart, I am mine own Redeemer. Number 4. I was right. Part 4, number 4. Here we go. Stop the way of them that would persecute you. Let those who devise thine undoing be hurled back to confusion and infamy. Let them be a chaff before the cyclone, and after they have fallen, rejoice in thine own salvation. Then all the bones shall say pridefully, Who is like unto me? Have I not been too strong for mine adversaries? Have I not delivered myself by mine own brain and my own body? Part 5. Blessed are the strong, for they shall possess the earth. Cursed are the weak, for they shall inherit the yoke. Number 2. Blessed are the powerful, for they shall be reverenced among men, and cursed are the feeble, for they shall be blotted out. Number 3. Blessed are the bold, for they shall be masters of the world, and cursed are the righteously humble, for they shall be trodden under cloven hooves. Number 4. Blessed are the victorious, for victory is the basis of right. Cursed are the vanquished, for they shall be vessels forever. Number 5. Blessed are the iron-handed, for the unfit shall flee before them, and cursed are the poor in spirit, for they shall be spat upon. Number 6. Blessed are the death-defiant, for their days shall be long in the land, and cursed are the gazers towards the richer life beyond the grave, for they shall perish amidst plenty. Very interesting. So 3 cups. Blessed are the destroyers of false hope, for they are the true messiahs. Cursed are the God adorers, for they shall be shorn sheep. Number 8, blessed are the valiant, for they shall obtain great treasures, and cursed are the believers in good and evil, for they are frightened by shadows. Number 9, blessed are those that believe in what is the best for them, for never shall their minds be terrorized. Cursed are the lambs of God, for they shall bleed whiter than snow. Number 10, blessed is the man who has sprinklings of enemies, for they shall make him a hero. Cursed is he who doeth good unto others, and sneer upon him in return, for he shall be despised. 11. Blessed are the mighty-minded, for they shall ride the whirlwinds. Cursed are they who teach lies for truth, and truth for lies, for they are an abomination. 12. Thrice cursed are the weak, whose insecurity makes them vile, for they shall serve and suffer. 13. The angel of self-defeat is camped in the souls of the righteous. The eternal flame of power through joy dwelleth within the flesh of the Satanist.
Learn more at abracast.com. Get bonus content by signing up for the mailing list. Get all that, plus many exclusive episodes by supporting the show at patreon.com or subscribestar.com.
Hello. My name is Riley Finwood, and this is As Within, So Without, a podcast in which I delve into esoteric belief systems. In this series, we're going to take a look into the spiritual, the occult, the magical, the paranormal, and even the extraterrestrial. A quick peek into episode 1, we're going to deep dive right into the nature of reality itself. From here, we'll build a platform from which we can jump into the fun stuff, like aliens. I want to address how powerful our beliefs are in and of themselves. It may sound obvious, but what we believe determines our identities, our pursuits, our success, our failures, who we surround ourselves with, how we deal with issues, and quite frankly, determines our destinies. As we believe within, so it is without. There's the title already. Most of you who will be listening to this podcast will already have an openness to these topics. However, it's the more logical and grounded of us who I'll be attempting to reach at the start. With the world in chaos at the moment, I think more of us are opening up to things that we would have otherwise thought impossible. And I want you to interact with me. Ask questions, demand answers, tell me I'm wrong, tell me I'm right. I'll invite discussion with love, of course. So, without further ado, let's get weird, let's tell stories, let's pull down the moon.
Moving into the next chapter, it's called Air, the Book of Lucifer, the Enlightenment. The Roman god, little g, Lucifer, was the bearer of light in the spirit of the air, the personification of enlightenment. In Christian mythology, he became synonymous with evil, which was only to have been expected from a religion whose very existence is perpetuated by clouded definitions and bogus values. It is time to set the record straight. False moralisms and occult inaccuracies must be corrected. Entertaining as they may be, most stories and plays about devil worship must be recognized as obsolete absurdities they are. It has been said, the truth will make men free. The truth alone has never set anyone free. It is only doubt which will bring mental emancipation. Without the wonderful element of doubt, that doorway through which truth passes would be tightly shut, impervious to the most strenuous poundings of 1,000 Lucifers. How understandable that the Holy Scripture should refer to the infernal monarch as the father of lies. A magnificent example of character inversion, if one is to believe the theological accusations that the devil represents falsehood. And it surely must be concurred that he, not God, that established all spiritual religions and wrote all of the holy Bibles, when one doubt is followed by another, the bubble grown large from long accumulated fallacies threaten to burst. For those who already doubt supposed truth, this book is revelation. The Lucifer will have risen. Now is the time for doubt. The bubble of falsehood is bursting, and its sound is the roar of the world. LaVey certainly has a voice, doesn't he? Doesn't he? I love it. Okay, so the first section I'm going to read from this Enlightenment chapter is called Wanted, God, Dead or Alive. It is a popular misconception that the Satanist does not believe in God. The concept of, quote, God, unquote, as interpreted by man, has been so varied throughout the ages that the Satanist simply accepts the definition which suits him best. Man has always created his gods rather than the gods creating him. God is to some benign, to others terrifying. To the Satanist, God, by whatever name he is called or by no name at all, is seen as the balancing factor of nature, and not as a being concerned with suffering. This powerful force which permeates and balances the universe is far too impersonal to care about the happiness or the misery of flesh and blood creatures on this ball of dirt upon which we live. Anyone who thinks Satan is evil should consider all men, women, children, and animals who have died because was God's will. Certainly a person grieving the ultimately loss of a loved one would much rather have their loved one with them than in God's hands. Instead, they are unconsciously consoled by the clergymen who say, quote, "It was God's will, my dear," or "He is in God's hands now, my son." Such phrases have been a convenient way for religionists to condone or to excuse the mercilessness of God. But if God is in complete control and as benign as he is supposed to be, why does he allow these things to happen? Too long have religionists been falling back on their Bibles and rule books to prove or disprove, justify, condemn, or interpret. We talked a lot about this on the show. These items, like these little questions that, given enough thought and penetrating analysis, will lead one down the path of Gnosticism or something, some other alternative, right? A lot of times it's, innocent, we'll just say innocent babies dying or innocent children dying. Hannibal Lecter would talk to you about God dropping the roofs of churches onto the parishioners and ask a similar question. Back to the book. The Satanist realizes that man and the action and reaction of the universe is responsible for everything. He doesn't mislead himself into thinking that someone cares. No longer will we sit back and accept fate without doing anything about it, just because it says so in chapter such and such, Psalms so and so, and that's that. The Satanist knows that praying does absolutely no good. In fact, it actually lessens the chance of success for the devoutly religious. Too often sit back complacently and pray for a situation which, if they were to do something about on their own, could be accomplished much quicker. Satanists shun terms such as hope and prayer, as they are indicative of apprehension. If we hope and pray for something to come about, we will not act in a positive way, which will make it happen. The Satanist, realizing that anything he gets out of his own doing takes command of the situation instead of praying to God for it to happen. Positive thinking and positive actions add up to results. Just as Satanist does not pray for God's assistance, he does not pray for forgiveness for his wrongdoings. In other religions, when one commits a wrong, he either prays to God for forgiveness or confesses to an intermediary and asks him to pray to God for forgiveness for his sins. The Satanist knows that if praying does no good, confessing to another human being like himself accomplishes even less. And it is, furthermore, degrading, which I would argue is the whole point. The whole point. When Satanists commit a wrong, he realizes that it is natural to make a mistake, and if he is truly sorry about what he has done, he will learn from it and take care not to do the same thing again. If he is not honestly sorry about what he has done, and he knows he will do the same thing over and over, he has no business confessing and asking for forgiveness in the first place. This is exactly what happens. People confess their sins so they can clear their conscience and be free to go out and sin again, usually the same sin. There are as many different interpretations of God in the usual sense of the word as there are types of people. They imagine the images run from a belief in God who has some vague sort of universal cosmic mind to an anthropomorphic deity with a long white beard and sandals who keeps track of every action of every individual. Even within the confines of a given religion, the personal interpretations of God differ greatly. Some religions actually go so far as to label anyone who belongs to a religious sect other than their own a heretic, even though the overall doctrines and interpretations of godliness are nearly the same. For example, the Catholics believe that the Protestants are doomed to hell simply because they do not belong to the Catholic Church. In the same way, many splinter groups of the Christian faith, such as the evangelicals or the revivalist churches, believe that the Catholics are heathens who worship graven images. Christ is depicted in the image that is most physiologically akin to the individual worshiping him, and yet Christians criticize heathens for the worship of graven images, and the Jews have always been given the devil's name. Even though the God in all of these religions is basically the same, each regards the same way chosen by the others is reprehensible. And to top it all, religionists actually pray for one another. They have scorn for their brothers of the right-hand path because their religions carry different labels, and somehow this animosity must be released. What better way than through prayer? A simpering, polite way of saying, I hate your guts, is a thinly disguised device known as praying for your enemy. Praying for one's enemy is nothing more than bargain basement anger, and of a decidedly shoddy and inferior quality. If there has been so much violent discrepancy to the proper way to which to worship God, how many different interpretations of God can there be? And who is right? All devout white lighters are concerned with white lighters. I love it. I'm sorry. My phone was ringing. I had to stop. All devout white lighters are concerned with pleasing God so that they might have the pearly gates opened for them when they die. Nevertheless, if a man has not lived his life in accordance to the regulations of his faith, he can at the last minute call a clergyman to his deathbed for final absolution. The priest or minister will then come running on the double to make everything right with God and see to it that his passport to the heavenly realm is in order. The Yazidis, a sect of devil worshippers, take a different viewpoint. They believe that God is all-powerful but also all forgiving, and accordingly feel that it is the devil whom they must please, as he is the one who rules their lives while here on earth. They believe strongly that God will forgive all of their sins once they have been given the last rites. They feel no need to concern themselves with the opinion God may hold for them while they live. With all of the contradictions in the Christian scriptures, many people currently cannot rationally accept Christianity the way it has been practiced in the past. Great numbers of people are beginning to doubt the existence of God in the establishing Christian sense of the word, so they have taken to calling themselves Christian atheists. True, the Christian Bible is a mass of contradictions, but what could be more contradictory than the term Christian atheist? If prominent leaders of the Christian faith are rejected the past interpretations of God, how then can their followers be expected to adhere to previous religious traditions? With all the debate about whether or not God is dead, if he isn't, he'd better have Medicare. I'm Kamala Harris, and I have approved this message. The God you save may be yourself, is the next portion. All religions of spiritual nature are inventions of man. He has created an entire system of gods with nothing more than his carnal brain, just because he has an ego and cannot accept it. He has to externalize it into some great spiritual device he calls, quote, God, unquote. God can do all things man is forbidden to do, such as kill people, perform miracles to gratify his will, control without any apparent responsibility, etc. If man needs such a God to recognize that God, then he is worshiping an entity that a human being invented. Therefore, he is worshiping by proxy the man that invented God. Is it not more sensible to worship a God that he himself has created in accordance to his own emotional needs? One that best represents the very carnal and physical being that has the idea power to invent a God in the first place. If man insists on externalizing his true self in the form of God, then why fear his true self in fearing God? Why praise his true self in praising God? Why remain externalized from God in order to engage in ritual and religious ceremony in his name? Man needs ritual and dogma, but no law states an externalized God is necessary in order to engage in ritual and ceremony performed in God's name. Could it be that when he closes the gap between himself and his God, he sees the demon of pride creeping forth and that very embodiment of Lucifer appearing in his midst? No longer can view himself in two parts, the carnal and the spiritual, but he sees them merge as one. And then, to his abysmal horror, discovers that they are only the carnal and always were. Then he either hates himself to death day by day or rejoices that he is what he is, like Popeye the Sailor. If he hates himself, he searches out new and more complex spiritual paths of enlightenment in hopes that he may split himself up again in his quest for stronger and more externalized gods to scourge his poor, miserable shell. Sorry about that. If he accepts himself and recognizes that ritual and ceremony are the important devices that his invented religions have utilized to sustain his faith in a lie, then it is the same form of ritual that will sustain his faith in the truth, the primitive pageantry that will give his awareness of his own majestic being added substance. When the religious faith in lies has waned, it is because man has become closer to himself and farther from God, closer to the devil. I've been watching the conventions. Can you tell I'm reading like I'm giving a speech? If this is what the devil represents, and a man lives his life in the devil's fane, with the sinews of Satan moving his flesh, then he either escapes from the cacklings and the carpings and of the righteous, or he stands proudly in his secret places of the earth and manipulates the folly-ridden masses through his own satanic might, until that day when he becomes forth in splendor and proclaiming, "I am a Satanist and bow down, for I am the highest embodiment of human life."
Thank you for listening to this episode. Send an email or visit us on social media to let us know what you think about this topic. And please remember to leave a 5-star rate and review.
Hey, did you learn something? Did you laugh? Supporting me is a way for you to be a part of the Abercast and ensure its growth and sustainability. It also means I can create a normal schedule for shows and bonus shows, as well as the exclusive Fellowcraft episodes. By supporting the show, you are not only a listener, but you are a part of the show. You supporting the show gives me a way to offer fun rewards as a thank you for showing your appreciation and support for our projects. Do you have an idea for a reward that you don't see? Let me know. My supporters are my partners. I currently pay for you to listen to the Abercast. Not only do I pay the hosting bills out of my own pocket, I volunteer my time and talent to each and every episode of the Abercast. The price of books, the time and resources of reading and researching, the massive amounts of gin and tonic needed, the equipment it takes to record the shows, the time and resources it takes to create the bonus material, and the cost to maintain the internet presence. Is it worth your support? I don't know. I'm proud of the Abercast, and I feel like I'm improving all the time. In addition to creating the show that you dig and that you are excited about, I also have a full-time commitment and other obligations. So why financial support? All of the supporters help me focus my time on the quality and development of the podcast. And what if you can't afford, $1 or $3 or $10 or whatever a month? Believe me, I get that. There are many degrees of support, but if you can't support the show financially, please consider leaving a 5-star rate and review on your preferred podcast app. And don't forget that you could sign into the mailing list and still unlock a lot of bonus content. Thank you. I cannot put into words how much it means to me that you listen to the show each time I post a new episode. Your feedback, support, and love of the stories that we talk about here is what keeps me going.